The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Arcane Wonders, Game Toppers, mistaking a panic attack for a heart attack, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy in the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's the Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board, card, and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Tang Garden from Lucky Duck Games. Then the Dukes take a look back at their review of Marvel Champions in their Dukes Double Take. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And this is episode 238, which we're calling Wu-Tang Stan. Wu-Tang Stan, that title suggestion thanks to Blaine Miley over from our Board Game Geek Guild. And this makes a lot of sense, Alex. We're talking about Tang Garden, hence the Wu-Tang and the Wu-Tang Clan. And Marvel Champions is being discussed in our Duke's Double Take. And of course, Stan Lee is everyone's favorite World War II vet and comic creator, right?
I don't have another one that's ahead of him on my list.
Okay, well, fair enough. Yeah, I love that title suggestion. I think that's hilarious. Actually, this was a killer week for naming the episode. There was a lot of really tough competition, and we get all of our help naming our episodes thanks to our Board Game Geek Guild, Guild number 2008, and we're going to have the runners-up at the end of the episode. But since we kind of mentioned the Wu-Tang Clan, Alex, I have a quick little activity for us to do.
Oh, boy.
Okay, so you know Donald Glover, a.k.a. Childish Gambino, right?
I do, yes.
Okay, very talented, hilarious, great. I love Donald Glover. Have you seen Atlanta? Atlanta's super good.
I've seen season 1 and part of season 2 of Atlanta.
Ooh. Have you seen like the Michael Jackson episode of season 2?
I don't think so.
Okay, all right, we'll talk about it off air. Do you know how Donald Glover, Childish Gambino, do you know how he came up with the name Childish Gambino?
I don't.
He used the Wu-Tang Clan's official name generator. And so if you Google just Wu-Tang Clan name generator and you put in your full name, it's going to give you your Wu-Tang Clan name. So Alex.
Yes.
Alex Goldsmith, typing it in now.
Okay.
Your Wu-Tang Clan name is Beloved, Beloved Overlord.
I don't know if it's fitting, but I mean, whatever.
It doesn't have to be fitting. It is what it is.
Sure. What about you?
You know what makes me really nervous? When I type it in, it's auto-populating. I have Google Chrome, and so it's auto-populating with some of my saved credit card information.
Oh, no.
Like it's not a credit card slot. So I'm wondering why it's doing that. But my Wu-Tang Clan name is, oh yeah, I've done this before. I have done this before. Irate Ninja.
I think if you swapped those, it would be more accurate.
I'm Beloved Overlord and you're Irate Ninja?
Yeah. Though I think the beloved would be in quotes for you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, Irate Ninja, how have you been?
I've been great, Beloved Overlord. Just great.
Do we have a Dukes of Diet update this time around?
Oh, things are bad. Things are super bad, Alex. That was almost a Bill Cosby, and I shouldn't do a Bill Cosby impersonation.
I wouldn't recommend it for several reasons.
Yeah, no, things are very, very bad. Very bad. There's been you've had some stress, which you'll discuss in a second.
Oh, yeah.
I've had some stress. Things have been bad. I was lax, and then I got serious for like 3 days, and then like just off the wagon. When I say that, I mean I'm like I haven't gained like 20 pounds. I've gained like 5 pounds, and I haven't done anything about it. But it's fine. I'll be fine. Nothing super crazy, but I've been saying this for I don't know how long. I really got to start working out. There's no reason I can't get up like 20 minutes early. Get up 20 minutes early. Do some burpees, do some push-ups, do some kettlebell swings, some crunches, some whatevers. Like 20 minutes. It's all I need. And I can do it, and I'm just lazy, and I stink, and I'm the worst. On the bright side, aside from Dukes of Diet, slight programming note. I think at some point, a couple days after this episode drops, or a week or so after this episode drops, you might be able to tune in to watch me and Suzanne crack some packs of Magic cards. We've got some boxes of Commander Legends. I'm sending her a couple boxes. I've got a box. And so going to crack some packs probably on the live stream at some point. So that'll be fun if you want to come join us and look at some sweet Magic cards. Alex, you excited to watch that and join in?
I won't. It won't be happening. I won't understand it. I won't know what's going on. I will not participate.
There's a Black Lotus. You know the Black Lotus, right?
Yes, I'm familiar with the very expensive card known as the Black Lotus. Yes.
They've reprinted a Black Lotus, but not fully. It only works to cast your commander, it's really ridiculous. But anyway, that's how I'm doing. Alex, how you doing?
Bad.
Oh boy.
I'm doing bad. Not for a ton of specific reasons. I mean, there's the usual stressors out in the air. It's 2020. I don't think there's anything more to say other than that. At least I'm not in New Mexico is on full lockdown. St. Louis is on mostly full lockdown, partial lockdown. So this Saturday at the gym, this was sort of the triggering event in a way, Sean. I did great. We had a competition, weightlifting competition. I did a PR of 235 pounds for a clean.
Nice.
Pretty good for me.
Yeah, it's really good.
And then 355 deadlift, which is just okay. But not
for your frame, that's good.
Sure. Yeah. Look, I'm not gonna go out there saying like, "Oh, I'm weak." Just for the gym, most people were in the upper 300s, the lower four. We're higher. It's fine. It's all fine. But in hitting that number, I strained my lower back and took some ibuprofen. Abby took good care of me. And Sean, I will get close to the camera for this moment. But
I've seen it. I've seen it.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
We played D&D. We played D&D this week, remember?
Oh, that's right. Yeah. It's better now. So for folks who can't see.
Not by much.
Yeah, it is. For folks who can't see, burst blood vessel in the eye that happened sometime Saturday into Sunday. Don't know exactly why. Don't know exactly what caused it. Dr. Google tells me it's nothing to worry about and will go away. And sure enough, it is slowly going away. But looks freaky. And then this week has been so stressful. Obviously, neither Abby nor myself are from here. The plan was to go to see Abby's parents in North Carolina for Thanksgiving, but of course, big questions as to whether that makes sense or not. And so sort of the limbo of that is stressful. The limbo of maybe not seeing my parents for Christmas is stressful. And I know a lot of people are going through similar stressors. Maybe some people are probably excited not to see their parents for Thanksgiving or Christmas. I'm sure that's the case too. But it's just a lot of stress in the world, and some stress at work, and some stress at I'm doing some part-time marketing stuff for North Star Games. I think I've talked about this on here, talking about Oceans, and I mean, there's been some last-second changes and stuff with that too, and so feeling pulled in a lot of different directions, not as active as I like to be because of the pulled, lower back, and last night, Wednesday night, before the recording of this show. It was about 5:00, was just wrapping up work, and I just felt this radiating pain down my arm. I felt lightheaded. I was feeling really off all of a sudden, and I was looking up heart attack symptoms, and I was just freaking out. And later realized, it's a panic attack. Not something I'm super used to. I've felt depression at times. I've felt anxiety at times, but this was the kind of a full-blown panic attack in this moment, and I'm feeling better in this moment. But
good,
yeah, good, very good. But yeah, and part of this too, Sean, is just kind of feeling disconnected a little bit, from playing games in person with people. This would be as of the recording of this would be BGG-Con weekend.
Yep.
So missing out on that. I haven't done photography in a few months. I during the course of a work day, I'm pretty well confined here, and that's lovely. It's nice and flexible, but it's also a situation where you feel like you're kind of on an island sometimes. And so it's tough. I'm definitely feeling 2020 really hard right now. And I'm sure a lot of our listeners are very much in that same boat, probably to an even greater degree. But Abby's been super supportive, super helpful. She's doing well. But it's just been a week. It's just been a week, Sean.
Do you want to hear something ironic?
Yeah.
So for someone who has not gone to very many conventions in the last 2 years. Had we been able to go to BGG this year, or had it been happening, I would have been in a position to go this year.
Oh,
As busy as work is, I would have been in a position to go. So, do me a favor, Alex, though. Don't do any like high weight, like single rep deadlifts anymore. Like someone your age has no business doing that anymore. Like legit.
my age?
Yes.
I'm 31.
Over 30. You have no business doing a single rep max weight deadlift. Don't do that.
I was
Super
repping.
bad.
I was repping 305. It was fine.
Multiple reps. That's fine. It's really bad for your body. As a former national champion powerlifter in high school, it was bad, and my body was better able to take it then. If I were like, oh man, if I were to do like a single, that's.
All right, good advice. I don't
Look
like.
at your eye. See what happened?
I think that's probably what caused it, or was a contributing factor to it.
Oh, it certainly was. Next time, your whole little head's gonna pop.
That's fair. I was happy with the clean though. It was a power clean too.
Yeah.
Anyway,
No, it's solid. That's a solid lift.
yeah, I felt good about it. Anyway, that's everything but board games going on in our lives. Sean, this is the week where you get to be the sandwich because I have been very lax in my new plays.
No.
Oh.
We're the sandwich. You and I are the sandwich.
Oh, sorry.
Alex.
I'm the filling of this sandwich.
You're the meat. You're the sloppy Joe meat.
Yes.
And I'm the not ciabatta, not ciabatta bun. I want like what's
you want rye? Do you want pretzel bun?
No, it's a bun. Oh, a pretzel bun. Yeah, I'm the pretzel bun. All right.
Pretzel bun's pretty good.
So our friends over at Restoration Games, Justin and Suze, they sent out an early copy of the new Unmatched Buffy the Vampire Slayer Unmatched. Oh yeah, it's super awesome. So we reviewed Unmatched Cobble and Fog a couple months ago. This whole Unmatched system is they've got 6 different sets. Some of them are these 4 hero sets. Some of them are these dual 2 hero sets, and they're all mix and matchable. And basically it's this fighting game with miniatures on a very simple board with interconnected spaces for adjacency and movement and things like that. And you are simply trying to eliminate your opponent's hero. Some of the heroes have some sidekicks, but you're trying to kill your opponent's hero. Everyone starts at a different life total, and you're playing some card play, maneuvering around, attack, defend, etc. So we reviewed Cobble and Fog, which had Dracula, it had Sherlock Holmes, Invisible Man, Jekyll and Hyde. Since then, I've purchased, I enjoyed the system quite a bit. You enjoyed the system quite a bit. I purchased the Raptors versus InGen, the Jurassic Park duel. And then Suze and Justin sent me Buffy. Suze knows that I'm a huge Buffy fan. Buffy and I are the same age. I think I've mentioned that before at some point on the show. I don't know if Sarah Michelle Gellar and I don't think we're the same age, but Buffy and I are the same age. We graduated the same year. I'm pretty sure Sarah Michelle Gellar's older.
I'm going to do some research.
You do research. Huge Buffy fan. I've watched it multiple times through. I've read the comics. Huge Buffy fan. And I know Suze is as well. So Buffy, this new set comes with 4 new heroes and their sidekicks. It comes with Angel and Giles and Xander. But here's the thing. You pick which sidekick you use. And when you pick which sidekick you use, that affects your deck because there are some Giles cards and there are some Xander cards. And so you basically kind of build your deck on the fly, sort of. So that's really interesting. First time it's done that. There's also Willow and Tara. Tara's Willow's girlfriend. And Willow is a witch. By the way, some minor spoilers for Buffy. At a certain point, Willow turns into Dark Willow or Evil Willow. And so there's a mechanic in here where whenever Willow or Tara gets damaged, Willow will flip to Dark Willow, which powers up some of her cards. Some of her cards are more powerful. They have a little Dark Willow symbol on them. And so they'll give you some extra ability. So she kind of wants to be Dark Willow. But then there are certain cards that she plays that might turn her automatically back into regular Willow. Or if she ends her turn adjacent to Tara, she'll also turn back. In other words, Tara like calms her down and like come back to the light side, so to speak. Did I mention Angel? No, not Angel. Did I mention Buffy? I have it wrong in my notes here. Did I mention Buffy can move through enemy figures?
You didn't mention that.
Just automatically. She can just move through enemy figures, which I don't think any of the other heroes can do. I don't think I've seen that before. I haven't played with the heroes of legend, the Sinbad, what was it? Sinbad, King Arthur, Medusa, and Alice, I believe. I haven't played with that set yet. But I think she's the first. The third pair is Angel and Faith. This is when Angel, who's a vampire and Buffy's love interest in the first season for much of the show, turns into Angelus, the bad version, the demon version. And Faith, who's a slayer who goes bad. So they are super stressful. One of the things I like about this is in most card games, you want to draw cards, right? But in this game, the quicker you go through your deck, the more likely you are to start taking additional damage, because if you run out of cards, every time you're forced to draw and can't, all of your figures take damage, all of your heroes and fighters, everybody. Fighters are first to everyone, heroes and sidekicks. So they have this thing where if they lose a fight, if either if either Angel or Faith loses a fight, they draw a card. So whether you lose on the attack or the defense, you draw a card. So you're like, wow, I'm super flush with cards, but you're looking at your deck and you're like, holy cow, this can get really bad. So it's kind of this idea of the vampires, even though Faith isn't a vampire, but the vampires have good card draw, but at a price, right? And then finally there's Spike and Drusilla, and this is like second season Spike and Drusilla. Spike is a vampire, Drusilla's his longtime lover, and she's a little on the crazy side, but she's also prophetic or clairvoyant or whatever. She can see into the future, visions and things like that. And they use a shadow mechanic where it's kind of like Invisible Man, where Invisible Man had the smoke counters. They have these shadow counters. Now, with Invisible Man, the Invisible Man can move from like one shadow counter to another. Spike and Drusilla can't do that, but whenever they're on a shadow counter, or maybe their opponent is on a shadow counter, it buffs the cards in certain ways. Also, Drusilla's ability to kind of see the future, lets you see your opponent's hand and take cards out of it, things like that. It comes with a two-sided board. On one side is Sunnydale High School. The other side is the Bronze, which was the underage hangout where all of the like indie bands from the 90s came to play in town. And it was really good. This was a really, really good set. The theme was fantastic. I think I really like the Willow Terra pair up. I really like that a lot. And I played this with Mariah. Mariah hasn't played any of the Unmatched. We played 3 games of it the other night. I've seen all of the heroes. I haven't played with them all yet, but I've seen them all. And she really enjoyed it. The Buffy helped, but she was really interested to hear about, I started telling her about the other sets that we have, the other sets that are out there. And then when I told her like we could mix and match, her mind was blown. She's like, oh, I didn't think about that. So like, I'd want to play Buffy versus Raptors. Like that sounds really cool. So this, like they knocked it out of the park. It's got this really cool neon aesthetic. Like the Unmatched art is really like, it's the stylistic art. It's really solid. And it's like these neon, like purple and pink and teal and yellow. And the card art is amazing. Like this is a fantastic production, just a fantastic production, fantastic theme. Gameplay was great. I really enjoyed it. And I'm glad that it was a good entry point. Like I think if Mariah had played Cobble and Fog, she would have been like, oh, this is cool. Yeah. All right. I like it. But I think the Buffy really like hooked her, and it has made her want to try the other stuff as well. So I say A+, A+ to Restoration. I am very curious what's going to happen in the double take when we get to the double take for Unmatched, Cobble and Fog, because I would suspect by that point I will have possibly collected everything.
Okay.
So,
you're all in.
I'm all in. I think it's a fantastic system. It is, I love a skirmish duel. It is on the lighter side for that. But I think it's highly accessible. there's enough meat on the bones that it keeps me interested. And I really like the thematic choices they're making. I like the mix and match. I think it's really solid.
Okay. All right.
So that's Unmatched Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I have pieces of trivia for you, Sean, which you may
All right.
be able to do well at.
Okay,
so
let's
three
hear it.
questions. And listeners, you can play along at home. Sarah Michelle Gellar is how old as of the time of this recording?
Okay, so I'm 39. I'm going to say that she is 44.
You are close.
Oof.
You are not quite right. She's 43.
43. Okay, I thought I remember her being like 4 or 5 years older than me. Yeah.
Yeah. Birthday is in April.
Yeah.
All right. Other piece of trivia. This one may be super easy. Who is Sarah Michelle Gellar married to?
She is married to Freddie Prinze Jr. from Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Yes. They were married in 2002, and in fact, her official name, Sarah Michelle Prinze. So there you go.
All right, 1 for 2. 1 for 2, Alex.
1 for
Go
2.
2 for 3.
And this one might be too easy too. But as you likely know, Sarah Michelle Gellar did not originate the role of Buffy.
Nope.
Which actress did originate the role of Buffy?
That was Christy Swanson, playing opposite of Luke Perry and also Paul Rubens, aka Pee Wee Herman.
You are correct. You are not only correct, you've nailed more than I had to ask you.
And the big bad was played by, from Blade Runner. Oh my God.
He's going to give up all his
Rutger
points
Hauer.
if he doesn't get it.
Rutger Hauer.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you go.
I know my Buffy, even the terrible, terrible movie. God, it's bad.
I haven't seen it. I haven't seen any Buffy, anything Buffy related.
The movie's a fun watch, but it's bad.
All right. Fair enough. Well, that is Unmatched Buffy. Sean, I got in a play of something I was very skeptical of, but bought nonetheless. This is a game from our good friends over at Capstone Games, designed by Uwe Rosenberg. It's New York Zoo. Sean, have you heard of or looked to buy New York Zoo?
I am very interested in New York Zoo. Absolutely. First, Capstone Games, big plus in its column. Uwe Rosenberg, big plus. Yes.
So the thing, though, for me, and the reason I was skeptical is since Patchwork, there have been a lot of these polyomino type games that Uwe's put out that have not really lived up to the hype. It's hard to hit the level of Patchwork. That game is a masterwork in my mind. But there have been other tries. I think Indian Summer, Cottage Garden. There have been other things that have been much hyped, but ultimately they're just kind of, I like Patchwork better. Sure. So that was my skepticism coming in with New York Zoo. So New York Zoo is, again, a lot like Patchwork. It uses polyominoes, but unlike scoring off of points, this is a race game. Your objective is to fill in your grid first. And they have different boards for different player counts because the first player disadvantage is you have more squares to fill in on your board than your opponent does, as an example. And I mainly know this from having played it too, but I think it's true of other counts here as well. So here's how this works. On your turn, you're going to move the elephant figurine forward anywhere from 1 space all the way up to, I believe, 3, 4, or 5. I don't know offhand, but somewhere in that range. And if you land on a polyomino stack, you pick that piece up and you add it to your board. You fill in some space. Great. Good job. When you do that, you also add an animal from your pen onto that space as well. The other thing you can do is you can land on an animal space, and you'll get one of each type of animal. You might get a kangaroo and a flamingo, as an example. You're going to add those to different hexes on the board. So basically, these polyominoes on your board are pens that are exhibits to hold the animals. How this is going to work is there are certain spots on the board. You're moving this elephant around a loop. And anytime it passes, say, a flamingo breeding line, any player who has 2 or more flamingos in their habitats is going to breed flamingos. This was a throwback in many ways, Sean, to one of the first Uwe games I ever played. In fact, I think the first. No, I don't know about that. Anyway, Caverna. It's a throwback to Caverna and some of his animal breeding style games.
The animal husbandry from Agricola, Caverna, Fields of Arla,
exactly.
etc.
Yeah, it's a nice little blend in mechanics. And I should say, the little figures for these, the little wooden animeeples, are really well done by Capstone.
It's an incredible production. Like, it looks really good. The animeeples look great. And they're different animeeples, right? They're not like
Yes.
the typical cows and yeah.
No, they look really cool. They fit on the board nicely. It makes the game a little bit fiddly, but I don't mind it in this case because it adds to the feel of this game. So anytime you fill up one of your pens, you discard all the animals save for one, which can go back into your kind of main pen area, and then you get to grab a filler tile. There are filler tiles of various sizes used to kind of fill in the gaps between some of these larger, more awkwardly shaped polyominoes. What's also interesting, though, is as the game goes on, the setup of this is such that you put the smaller tiles, the ones that will fill up less space, on the bottom of these stacks. Now, they're smaller, they fill up less space, but they also means they fill up on animals faster. So they're more likely to trigger you getting additional tiles to fill in the rest of your board. So it's this balancing act between, do I go for adding in this big space filler, but maybe going a little bit slower on filling up in animals, or do I set up this nice animal engine to trigger? It is nicely done. It is, again, has that elegance of something like Patchwork, but with a little bit extra, a little bit more added on. And the production value is a nice treat in this game. I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this a lot more than, say, Nova Luna, which I know a lot of people rave about. I didn't dig it so much. This one I liked a lot better. It gives you, again, that polyomino feel, but with a little something extra, with a nice production. Nicely done capstone.
Cool.
Yeah, so that's New York Zoo.
All right. Well, I've got another quiz, Alex. I'm going to quiz you now.
Uh-oh.
All right. But it's slightly more gaming related. So, Alex, what does CCG stand for?
Collectible card game.
What does TCG stand for?
Trading card game.
Okay. And what does LCG stand for?
Limited card game.
Living.
Oh.
Oof. All right.
Man.
2 for 3 so far. What, in your opinion, so there's no right or wrong answer, except there are. What is the advantage of a living card game, an LCG, over a CCG or a TCG?
The advantage is that you have knowledge of what you're buying. You're not buying a bunch of packs to fish for things. You have everything you need in the set right off the bat. That's far and away my preferred if I were to get one of these kinds of things. We'll talk about one a little bit later on, in fact.
Sure.
That is far and away my preferred way of playing.
And would you consider Keyforge to be an LCG / TCG? Excuse me. Strike that. Would you consider Keyforge to be a TCG / CCG, an LCG, or neither?
It's kind of its own thing, but it's closer in how it exists to. Well, it's
No, I don't know. For whatever reason, its own thing. The Stephen S. Pumpkins.
Yeah.
His own thing.
His own thing.
Keyforge. Its
By the
own
way, did you
thing.
just say Stephen S. Pumpkins?
Wow, I certainly did.
Wow.
David S. Pumpkins.
David S. Pumpkins.
Stephen S. Pumpkins is his car salesman cousin.
Hi, I'm Stephen S. Pumpkins. Can I get you into a brand new Hyundai?
No, not a brand new. He's a used car salesman.
Oh, sorry. Can I get you into an old Hyundai Sonata?
Okay. So I say all this as preamble because, okay, well, let me ask you this.
You didn't say anything. You asked me a bunch of questions.
Well, I ask all this, but okay, what could be an advantage of a CCG over an LCG model? Not for you, not for
not
you,
for me. Oh,
not for you, but for other people, perhaps.
An insane amount of money. They make an insane amount of money that way.
For the players, for the people purchasing these TCGs / CCGs, what's the upside for them?
If you time the market right, you can get pretty rich.
Okay. I would say that the upside is there are alternate modes of play. There's limited play, there's drafting, and there's seal deck play, which kind of is what there's kind of a seal deck aspect to Keyforge, but you can't really draft LCGs. You can't do seal deck LCGs. So there's that. And then there's the chase. There's this chase that kind of is fun for certain people. So certainly I get it. Now I'll come back. I'm gonna bring this full circle. Now I ask all of these things and I say all these things because I'm involved in another TCG, or I'm getting involved, dipping my toes in, and it's called Flesh and Blood, Alex. This came out in 2019. It's from New Zealand. It's from It's from, who's it by? Legend Story Studios. And every time I heard it on like YouTube or something, I always thought it was Legendary. I'm like, that's just kind of a generic name, but so is Legend Story. Legend Story Studios out of New Zealand. It's called Flesh and Blood. They have 3 sets that have come out. There's Welcome to Wraith, Arcane Rising, and then Crucible of something, the Crucible of War. So there is the first print run is out of print and it's super expensive. Like if you want to buy a box of 24 booster packs, it's like $900. But they just released the first of their unlimited print run for the first set, Welcome to Wraith. Much more reasonable. It's a little bit cheaper than what you'd find Magic booster boxes at. 24 packs instead of 36 in a standard Magic box. But again, it's a little bit just slightly cheaper. And it's a really interesting game. I've heard a lot of hype about this for the last couple months. A lot of input in the early design for Magic Pros. It is a dueling game. It's a 1v1 duel game where you have a hero. And this hero can have certain weapons in front of them at the start of the game, certain equipment, armor for their arms, their chest, their head, and their legs at the start of the game. And then you can play a full constructed match. You can play a blitz constructed, which is kind of mini constructed. And then you can do sealed deck, you can draft. Although, of course, it seems like a terrible time to come out with a TCG in the middle of a pandemic. But I am doing some sealed play where we're building sealed decks. You open up 6 packs and then you build a deck. So I have 1 booster box. And from that, I can build 4 sealed decks. And eventually, with enough of a card pool, buying some singles, I can play constructed. I don't know that there's going to be a community for it here in Albuquerque when things build up. Rory is interested. I can get Rory to play any TCG because he likes TCGs. I think my end game here though is not to play competitive constructed. I think it's to every couple months when a new set comes out, buy a booster box or 2, play some sealed, and eventually maybe make a cube. I think this would. Do you know what a cube is, Alex?
I don't know.
A cube started in Magic, and you could do in other CCGs as well, where basically you take cards and it's a curated collection, and you shuffle it all up, and you deal out 15 or how many cards are in a pack, and it's like a sealed or a draft set, where it's a booster pack essentially. You create a booster pack, and then you draft or do whatever. Maybe that's the end game, but it's a really interesting game. Let me just kind of talk about the high points and the low points. It's a multi-use card game where a card can be played either for its effect or for defense value or for paying resources. So you pitch cards kind of like you would in Marvel Champions to pay for other cards. So on your turn, you have 1 action point, which means you can generally do 1 thing unless you're playing cards with this go again ability. So you play 1 thing, you pitch cards from your hand for resources, and then your opponent can try and block this attack. It's usually an attack that you're playing. So I'm attacking you for 4, Alex, and you say, I'm going to play this card from my hand that has defense 2. Cool, I deal 2 damage to you. It's kind of like Unmatched in that sense. And then there's, card effects, things like that can change those things, alter those things. But the part that's really interesting to me is this teeter-totter balancing act, because on my turn, Alex, I'm attacking you with my 4 card hand, and I play out a couple cards, and you go to defend with one of your 4 cards in your hand, and then I force you to defend with another card in your hand. You have 2 cards left. On your turn, when you're attacking me, you only have those 2 cards. So you have to decide when you're taking damage, when you're not taking damage. It's really interesting. It's this really cool interplay. And I'm just now kind of getting a feel for it. And there's a lot to explore here. It's pretty interesting. I think that you would like the sealed aspect of it. If I were like, hey, Alex, I'm going to open a box. Here's 6 packs. Let's build it real quick. And we play a couple games and that's it. I think you'd like it just fine. It's not a super complex game. I mean, I think at a certain point, there'll be very high level players. There will be a pro circuit at some point. Some people are speculating that this is going to be a game that's going to have some longevity. The big three are Magic, Pokemon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Every other game tries to have that longevity, and it doesn't. I think this will be around for the next 4 or 5 years, and that's a good run for a CCG, but that affects the long-term value of the cards. So I don't think it's going to break into the top 3 or be the 4th one or whatever, but I think it's a solid game, and I think I'll have some fun with it. So check it out. If you go to FAB-TCG, that's Flesh and Blood TCG.com. You can check it out. I really enjoy it. I think it's a really cool system. I played with Mariah. She liked it. She was like, I really liked it. And I was like, really? Are you sure? Are you just saying that? She's like, no, I really liked it. She's willing to play. She's willing to do some seal deck stuff. So cool. Maybe she'll be my dueling partner for dueling games. Because Raquel doesn't tend to like dueling games because I latch onto them better. And I could see how that would be frustrating, So
Interesting.
Anyway, that is Flesh and Blood TCG, the Welcome to Wraith initial set. And that's it for our board game sandwich, Alex.
Yeah. After the break, we're going to be diving on in to Tang Garden. Well, Sean, in these tricky times, our friends at Game Toppers want to let folks know that they're still open for business. They're still doing what they can to provide some at-home gaming goodness to help people upgrade their gaming experience while they're trapped at home. So Late Pledge Manager is open on Game Toppers. They have a lot of great bundles on their website, some of which might sell out, so check it out before it gets too late. Also, mats are going to be able to be shipped out relatively soon, so if that's something you've been looking for, hey, great. Thanks to Game Toppers for supporting the podcast and for supporting gamers looking to upgrade their gaming experience.
So go visit them at GameToppersLLC.com.
It's a saying you hear sometimes with games that a game is all style and no substance. Well, we know from first appearances that Tang Garden is a game that is all style. But is there substance there too? We'll tell you.
In Tang Garden, players take the role of engineers who have been summoned to build a garden while balancing elements of water, rock, and greenery. They need to decorate the garden with pavilions, bridges, different types of vegetation, and animals such as birds and goldfish. During the construction, characters will visit the garden to inspect how the natural elements are arranged and admire the surrounding landscape. All right, well, Tang Garden is a 2020 release from Thundergryph Games. It's designed by Francesco Testini and Pierluca Zizi, with illustrations by Matush Mazak. I'm sure that's totally wrong and butchered everything. This is a tile-laying game at its heart. There is a main board, which is a grid of squares that you're going to be laying square tiles out. All right, so there is a main board that is a grid that you're going to be placing the square garden tiles on. And then on the edges of the board, there are these cutout spaces where you're going to be inserting these small and large landscape tiles that the characters are going to be looking across the garden at the end of the game. There's going to be 4 different piles of these garden tiles. And the garden tiles are going to have some combination of rock features, water features, greenery features, and there's also some special ones that are kind of thrown in there. On these tiles, there are certain spots for certain decorations. So, for example, certain water feature spots might have a spot for either bridges or maybe for adding fish or lotus flowers, etc. Now, on a player turn, you're going to be able to either take a face-up garden tile, or you're going to get to draw a certain number of cards from the decoration deck and then choose one to place out on the already existing spots in the garden. Now, when you place a tile, you need to match it. So a rock needs to match a rock, a greenery, etc. There's also an additional facing, which is a pathway. And when you match these things, you're going to get certain bonuses. If you're matching greenery, rock, or water. By the way, I'm editing out so many mistakes, but I'm just letting everyone know now I'm struggling with this rules overview.
Oh, man. I don't know why.
I don't know why either. So if it matches those 3 terrain features, you're going to get to advance the corresponding track you have 3 tracks on your player board, and those will advance by 1. If you're matching pathways, you're going to get coins, and coins are basically endgame scoring points. Additionally, by placing a tile, if you manage to completely enclose a certain terrain feature, then you're going to get a bonus advancement of that particular color. So, for example, if I'm able to place a greenery such that it's matching greenery and it closes off this greenery section, I'm going to advance 2 green track on my player board. So there's that. Sometimes when I place a tile, I'm going to cover up a landscape token. There's a small landscape and there's the large landscape tokens, and these are placed out on the board in a particular way. It's set up. When I do that, I'm going to get to go through the stack of the landscape tiles of the appropriate size and then place it on one of the 4 cardinal directions on the edge of the board. And I'm going to want to do this in such a way that it's going to maximize points at the end of the game, and I'll come back to that here in a second. Now, the other action I have on my turn, instead of drawing a tile, is I can draw cards from the decoration deck, and if I like one that I see, I can build it. There's no cost associated with it. These are worth a certain number of points at the end of the game, and they score in different ways. For example, bridges are just worth 2 points. Every bridge you got, it's 2 points at the end of the game. But let's say that instead I place out a fish, a goldfish on one of the water spots. That's worth 0 points to me. But if I can pair it up with birds and trees, that's going to be worth 6 points for every pair of those I have. There's also a bunch of different types of trees. There's like pine trees and magnolias. And I think there's 5 different types of trees. And those are kind of worth geometric points the more you have of different types of trees. And there's a bunch of different things there. Now, additionally, if you have reached a certain threshold on your player board by advancing the 3 tracks, you're going to be able to get new characters. In fact, you'll start the game with 1 character. This 1 character has a corresponding miniature, and while that miniature is in front of you and on your card, you're going to get some sort of special bonus throughout the game. So, for example, 1 character, let's look at the child. The child says whenever you place a bird or a fish decoration, you get 2 coins, 2 points. That's pretty good. Now, when I take a new character, I have to choose from one of 3 of the face-up characters in the middle row, or I can pull blind from the top. There's also a special ability where I can search the deck for a special character, but I'll mention more about that in a second. But I'm going to add this new character to my tableau, and then from these available characters, I have to choose one of the miniatures and place them out into the garden. Now, if I place this character into the garden, I no longer get its ongoing special effect. However, this character is now worth endgame points at the end of the game. So, for example, the child I mentioned, I want the child to be able to see the animal icon on landscape tiles that she's pointed at. So I will place her. There are certain predetermined spots on the different tiles I can place a character. Also, if I add bridges or add pavilions, those are also placement spots. And I want her facing one of the 4 cardinal directions. And hopefully I've already placed certain landscape tiles there, or I plan to place them there for those endgame bonus points. Additionally, now I mentioned that you can choose a character of your choice. That's if you have the available lantern ability, because you start with 4 lanterns that give you special abilities throughout the game, but then you have to exhaust them. So one of them is go through the deck and find the character of your choice. Another one is rearrange one of the characters you've already deployed on the board. Another is place 2 garden tiles at the same time. And another is when you draw your cards from the decoration deck, you can place 2 of them. I would also point out that as these are exhausted, you can unexhaust them by spending certain landscape tokens that you've picked up during play. It's 4 landscape tokens to refresh in the 2-player game. It's 3 landscape tokens in the 3 or 4-player game. What am I missing, Alex? I know there's some stuff about reflipping the tiles, which we'll kind of talk about, I think, more in gameplay. But anything I'm missing rules-wise? Because I'm struggling here.
I mean, there were enough breaks in the action there that it would have been hard to track anyway. So I'm maybe, but I'm certainly not sure enough to tell you.
All right. Well, hopefully I'll reduce this 45 minutes of stumbling over rules into a 4-minute rules explanation for the listeners. So that's roughly how you play. I think it came out somewhat clean after the edit. All right, Alex, what were your initial expectations for Tang Garden?
So even before we had decided to review this game, and the decision to review this came off of you had backed this on Kickstarter, had not filled out your pledge manager,
Whoops.
then went back and said, hey, so can I get this? And we were kind of determining yes or no based on whether you were actually able to get one. And sure enough, graciously enough, you were able to get your Kickstarter copy of this, despite the fact that you royally screwed up.
And can I say that I was being very magnanimous, like this was clearly my fault, like any help you can give me would be great. I was very appreciative, very thankful. Like I didn't go swinging around like, well, I'm from the Dukes of Dice podcast. Like none of that.
Yeah, because that would have had a big effect. That would have had a big impact on things.
Well, who knows? He would have looked it up and be like, oh, 30 episodes. Like, yeah. But no, I was like, thank you so much. He's like, oh, no big deal. I'm like, no, really. Like, I really appreciate it. I was very, very gracious. Magnanimous makes it sound like I'm doing something good. That's the wrong word. I was very grateful. Grateful. Yes. So thank you very much to Thundergryph and their distribution. I do appreciate them because I know that's annoying. That's annoying to be that person that doesn't fill out and months after fulfillment. So thank you, Thundergryph.
So let me throw in there that Sean, you mentioned we had talked about this on the podcast before, possibly during Kickstarter section.
Yes, this came up in a Kickstarter section, and it resulted in me backing on Kickstarter.
Yeah. So my actual first impression is there. My secondary first impression was seeing this on a store shelf in Miniature Market, and I was, oh, wow. This thing looks really good. Like, this thing's got to have an incredible table presence. I'm so excited. I hope the game itself is good, but I certainly was blown away, and I had stars in my eyes from the presentation of this game. What about you, Sean?
Well, I mean, I backed it, right? So I had evidently high expectations, and I agree with you that the look of it, the components, the art, all of it absolutely drew me in. But then I think what drew me in more than anything else was one of the design credits. So again, this is designed by Francesco Testini and Pierluca Zizi. Do you know who Pierluca Zizi is, Alex?
The name sounded super familiar, and I thought I'd looked it up, but I don't recall offhand.
Okay, so he is one of the co-designers off of a game that I think you reviewed it, and I'm sure if you reviewed it, you hated it. Signore from What's Your Game? Did you review Signore?
Oh, I certainly did, and I certainly recall it, and I think I said it more should have been called Snorri, because it was that boring, and I didn't enjoy it. Anyway. So
he was one of the designers on Hyperborea, on Asgard, another What's Your Game, and on Signore. I liked Hyperborea well enough. Asgard is still on my shelf of shame, and it needs to get played, and I really want to play it. But Signore is a 6. It was a 6 in that review. It was a 6 on the double take. I've played it numerous times since we've reviewed it. I love Signore. I admit it looks drab, and it's dry as heck, and I completely get your distaste for it. But it is just a solid, heavy or medium heavy Euro game, and I love it. So I'm like, okay, I'm interested in this game, and I'm going to back it. And I did. And eventually I got it. And that was my expectations. So, designer, and then art and components seemed really solid.
Yeah. So, rulebook. Sean, did you learn this game from the rulebook?
I sure did. And it's one of those rulebooks that is the entire size of the length and width of the box, which I'm not a fan of.
It's a big box, too.
Yeah. I mean, it's like what, 12 by 12?
Yeah, I would say.
12 by 12.
It's a hefty box.
I don't have it down here, but like 3 or 4 probably.
It's a tall box, too. You're not wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't like the rule books when they're the size, like the 12 by 12, because they're kind of difficult to manage. And they take up space when you have on the board, and it's a little nitpicky thing. But we struggled with a couple things in the rule book. I don't know about you. Certain things weren't completely clear. It was not great. It was not a great rule book. It wasn't awful, but I certainly wouldn't call it great by any stretch. What did you think? How'd you learn this game?
I have a similar assessment. Also learned it from the rulebook. Also found it lacking in a couple of areas. Had to reread. For some reason, the flow of it wasn't quite intuitive, especially with the placement of tiles. It was just a lot of text and a lot of but it wasn't cleanly laid out, and it's not that hard of a concept, but it got
Yeah.
tangled up in the wash. That was one, and then there was I think I know the answer to this, having looked on BGG and rules clarifications. But as an example, Sean, you have those landscape tokens. If you take a landscape token, do you have to place that landscape on the side of the board you took it from? And the answer is you do not.
Yeah, no, you do not.
Right. But intuitively, you would think you would.
Yeah, I didn't have that thought, but I can certainly see how that could be an intuitive thought. And if in some ways that would be more interesting. I like that restriction.
Well, and the reason it makes sense is because it's oriented on that side. You're supposed to set it up so that they're too large and too small. Oh, I wasn't not a pun. You're supposed to set it up with too large and too small on that side of the board, which is exactly the number of available slots you have. So in terms of that, it makes sense. But
right. My big issue with the rules, the one thing that we couldn't quite figure out was exactly how timing worked on certain of the lantern abilities. So like for example, when do you use the lantern that lets you place extra decorations out? Do you use that before you see any of the cards, or do you get to see the cards and then choose to do that?
I'm not sure. And you're right. The timing on all of those is pretty unclear.
Right. So there were some timing issues, and I think they just kind of assumed that you'd get it. So I mean, there were things that I did where I chose, for the sake of not doing anything overpowered, interpreting the timing in a disfavorable way to me. And that was kind of frustrating. I'm like, why didn't you just tell me, like, when can you do these things? That's frustrating. Timing's important. When things can occur is important. And so that was lacking a bit.
Well, and it's also, if you use a tile to acquire something, can you then immediately spend to get a token refreshed and do that?
Right.
And that timing's not really clearly laid out either.
Correct. And I chose not to do that.
Me too.
Yeah, because I'm like, well, I would think you could be able to do this, but maybe that wasn't intended. Typically rules are permissive. They say this is something you can do. But at the same time, I didn't see it necessarily restricting you from that. I don't know. It was a little annoying, and I'm sure it's on BGG somewhere. And I didn't, let me put it this way. I didn't care enough to look.
Uh-oh. It's an early tip of the hand from Sean.
Yep.
Before we get to the negative side of all that, though, how about the thing that I think you're most likely to be the most positive about? Not even this? Maybe this?
No, yeah, absolutely this. No,
okay,
absolutely.
Okay.
Go on.
Art and components. Sean.
Wow.
This is a stunningly produced game. I mean, stunningly produced.
Absolutely. So let's slow it down here. Let's take some time. So we have a beautifully illustrated set of garden tiles that the tiles on the board just create this beautiful landscape. Well, not landscape, that's the wrong word. Beautiful garden. Yeah, a beautiful, beautiful garden. Like, I love how it's illustrated. The colors are very vibrant. There's this sort of like bounciness, for lack of a better word. Like, there's like, it feels like you can just kind of, it's like a memory foam mattress you can push down on. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It doesn't really, but and let me add to this too, Sean, that concept of the board being, it's not pure black and white. There's little gold touches on the board itself without those tiles on it, but it comes to life as you build out the garden. You really feel like you're filling it in. There's a dramatic difference. It just feels really satisfying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And then you have art on the cards, I think is really solid. Like, overall, the art, I think is excellent. You know, there's certain games that were like, well, the art doesn't hold it back, or the art's good, but no, the art here is excellent. Box art, board art, tile art, everything. Art is phenomenal. Very, very well done. Very well done.
Yeah. Well, and let's add in the other elements to the game, the other components to it, right? Because you have these tree standees, which are all colorful and really distinct and look cool. You have and I don't know if the deluxe edition came with something different, the Kickstarter edition did, but even the retail one, which is the one I was playing off of, the pagodas that you build, that you add to the garden, really satisfying. Building them was a little bit tricky for me. But once they're assembled,
Yeah, well, they're a combination of board for the
Right.
sides, and then the base and the top
Are
are
plastic.
plastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, really nice plastic.
and they look really cool. The bridges are in that same way. There's elements of board and plastic with those as well. You have the little decorations, little touches, the miniatures with the bases. I'm not a miniature snob, so I don't have distinct taste, but I thought they looked cool
Mhm.
with the little bases on them, and I could imagine someone painting them and having a really good time doing that. So in a lot of and then the landscape tiles themselves are really colorful and vibrant and beautiful and thematically tied to what they're representing. So those touches were great. Not everything is perfect with this.
Right.
So for me, and Sean, I'm sure you noticed this, you need to be able to see all 4 of the landscape tiles on the inside primarily. Now you could orient the board diagonally if you felt like it, I
Mhm.
guess, but it still doesn't really solve this problem, which is that you need to see what these landscape tokens are. You need to see what those are.
Yeah.
And they're real tiny. They're real tiny. And then, because of the way it's designed, and it's designed in a way that comes off aesthetically really beautifully, but practically gameplay wise, it gets in the way. You have this large landscape tile that blocks the small landscape tiles that also have those icons in front of them in such a way
Mhm.
that you can't see what's going on in the front ones from where you're sitting for that area that's right in front of you. And I don't know, like, imagine fixes I could have for this is you might have like a little cutout in the large ones where you could see the icons through. I don't think that would really work. Maybe you could have it more as a standee kind of thing where, again, there's sections of it taken out, but I don't know. It just,
Well, here's the thing. I get what so these landscape tiles get inserted into these slots in the board so that they're perpendicular to the flat board. So they're
yes.
sticking up, right?
Yep,
So
straight
you're
up.
creating these panoramas essentially on the edges of the board. Cool, but I think it's less than functional. I think it would have been more functional to simply have them lie face down.
Lay flat.
Lay flat. I think you would have been able to much more readily see that. And on top of it, some of the symbols were similar. And you're like, oh, that's fine because these symbols that these characters want are also color coded. But wait a second, because we got a problem here because I'm having a hard time distinguishing the yellow from the
Mhm.
gold, from
Yeah.
the orange, from the peach,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
the pink from the purple, and like, it
Yeah.
was
With
it
the
was
bases of the
frustrating.
character, with the bases of the characters too, we literally had to do process of elimination to find the right
Uh-huh.
the right ring to put on the right one. And yeah,
Right.
it's absolutely unquestionably a misstep. It's
Yes.
it's hard to distinguish between those, and the iconography doesn't pair up. And this isn't a small thing. It's a core part of the game is you scoring points based on the position of these people you add into your garden. So, by the way, I get why they did it thematically. There is this cool concept of you're looking out over all these waterfalls if you're the sword dancer. Really cool.
Mhm.
But again, from a practical gameplay perspective, it wasn't done with that in mind well enough. And the icons themselves, while color coded, are pretty small.
Yes. Unusually small. Like it was almost a decision of, well, we have this beautiful landscape tile and we want as much of the landscape art to be visible. But it's like you've got to make better decisions for functionality. And it was very difficult.
Well, and then let's add that the stacks themselves are hard to read. It's hard for me to plan ahead what I'm looking to do because I can't, from a long glance across the table, see what's available to me, really. It takes a much closer look. It takes a much keener eye. It kind of gets lost in the shuffle a little bit. And that's a shame because, again, they made that cool decision to have them be uniquely shaped. Really nice. I think that's super cool. But you're not wrong. It's not super functional. I think it's the biggest misstep of the game. In addition to, you mentioned the color-coded miniatures being so similar. Yeah, peach, gold, yellow, and some other version of yellow.
Well, and then I think the other issue kind of along with that is sometimes it was hard to keep track of the characters that are on the board. So the tree standees are good size. The pavilions are good size. Sometimes you're placing the characters inside the pavilions, which have 3 walls. And it was a bit counterintuitive 2, well, let me come back to that. So everything's so big, and it's these big blocking features. You would have to typically stand up, or I would stand up and kind of look around, trying to remember things. And so from a functional standpoint, you could have had a game where instead of these big chunky pieces that are 2, 3, 4 inches tall in some cases, you have tokens that go down, and that's less appealing aesthetically. Obviously, it would have been much more functional. I don't know if there's a compromise between the two, but it was difficult to kind of always be aware of what character was where. And again, with the color questions on the rings, the bases of the miniatures. And then the other thing was this whole concept of line of sight. I don't like that they use the concept line of sight, because when I think of line of sight, I think of intervening obstacles blocking line of sight.
Oh yeah, and that's not a thing.
And it's really not a thing at all. It's just they can view the entirety of one cardinal direction and then also straight ahead on. So like, for example, there are some characters that gain points at the end of the game if they're looking across in a straight line at water features. And there's others that are looking at the entire cardinal direction of landscape terrain or landscape tiles. So the use of line of sight at first was counterintuitive, because I was looking for rules about what blocks line of sight, and I couldn't find it.
This is your background coming into play, because this was not a thing for me.
Sure.
At no point. Now, it made scoring at the end of the game a little bit fiddly, because you had to lift some stuff up, and does this have a water feature on it? Does this not? Those sorts of things come into play.
Right.
I will say with the character issue, this mitigates it somewhat for me. Although there's a lot of mechanics, there's an entire token devoted to moving folks around. It never came into play. I didn't use that token once. Abby didn't use that token once over multiple plays.
Well, let's give a quarantine caveat. Do we both
Sure.
only play this at 2 players?
Absolutely.
Okay. I feel like, so yeah, you're right. We never use the token that lets you rearrange the characters. I suspect in a 3-4 player game, that becomes much more necessary.
And fair enough. And if that's the case, yeah, not being able to exactly tell facing or which characters where from a glance, because they're hidden by the pagoda, it's an issue.
Yeah.
And you're going to hear this from me in a moment here as well, because we're about to maybe be divergent here on a section, but there is something really charming in the presentation of this game.
Absolutely.
The level of charm overrode a lot of these things for me. They're absolutely flaws. You're not going to hear it like me say that they're not. The color coding's too similar. The practical issue, the fact that you can't, and they get in the way of gameplay. This is the kind of thing that I get irate about. And it's a stunning game, Sean, just in terms of the look and presentation. Like, just as someone who loves this hobby, to see something that lovingly produced always makes me smile.
Right. And yeah, so that charm you talk about, I mean, Chewie was upset that she couldn't play with us. Like, because there's a toy factor here, right? Like everything's chunky and it's like you're building a fort almost, the Guardian equivalent of, playing with blocks or whatever, building a castle or whatever. It like, yeah, you're right. There's a charm there, and it was fun. It was fun to build this garden.
Yes. And fun and I'm going to jump the gun on this, because I think the theme section where it is should probably be dead anyway.
Okay.
Thematically, we would play into it. Hey, we built this little island over here. Well, there's a spot for a bridge. Great, let's add a bridge. Okay, the person standing on the bridge looking over the island. This is the kid. He loves nature. He's going to kind of be on his own little isolated area, looking out at all of these different elk across. Like, you feel that with this game.
Yeah.
You feel that. You feel the water lilies going in there. You feel the pagodas here and the path winding this way. And it's well done in a way that, again, overrides some of the issues for me.
Can I tell you my favorite aspect of the theme?
Yeah.
So Tang Garden, the name comes from the Tang Dynasty. And this garden was built by the emperor for him and his lady friends. 2 characters, the emperor and the lady. There's also the empress, who is not his lady friend. And the empress, if you have the empress out in the garden, she gets you 9 points at the end of the game, except if the emperor or the lady is in her line of sight, she loses 3 points for each. In other words, she's all ticked off that hubby and his side chick are here.
Jeez. That's interesting. That's funny.
Yeah. You didn't catch that? That was like the first thing I noticed.
That was a character that didn't come up in our play.
Oh,
Yeah.
all right.
But it's something I'll notice the next time I play this. Spoiler alert. Hey, let's talk gameplay.
Sure.
Because we can go on all day about how charming, well produced it is, but as I said in the intro, does this have substance to match the style? Sean, you would say probably not in this case, yes?
This is a light to light medium tile placement game. I think the element that elevates it a little bit higher, closer to light medium, is the asymmetric powers of the characters, but not by much. I think at its heart, it's still a fairly light game. And what's our terrible score, or our terrible scale? The Goldrum scale.
Oh, geez.
Where the setup and the breakdown on this game is terrible for what you're getting. And that makes it is it a high Goldrum score or a low Goldrum score that's good? I forget.
I don't remember. It didn't work, unfortunately.
For me, the ratio is bad. Whatever it is, the ratio is bad. Because number one, there's just so much stuff to set up, and then putting it back in the insert is just it's a chore. And I had to look up how to do it online. Did you look up online or just throw everything in?
No, I actually we figured out a good way to do it without looking it up online. It fit in pretty well. I was surprised. I was very, very worried about it. But we got it in there with no real issues. So
okay. Yeah, so it was like I said, in my opinion, a light to light medium tile placement game, which there's a great many of them that I do like. I like tile placement. It's probably not my favorite mechanic. I certainly don't like tile placement when it feels tacked on. So like in a game like Praetor, there's the tacked on tile placement where you're trying to arrange the corners, which is just terrible. That's kind of the case in Teotihuacan also, where when you're building the pyramid, you're trying to do that as well. But where tile placement like Voluspa, blue peg, pink peg favorite, I love that tile placement. The tile placement in Carcassonne, like one of the classic tile placement games, is fantastic. Isle of Skye is fantastic. And I like think of a game like Isle of Skye, which is probably slightly more complicated because of the bidding or the auction. Is it auction or bidding?
It's kind of, I mean, it's price setting.
You're setting your price setting. Yeah. So that makes it a little bit more complicated, which means I'm probably a little bit more likely to like it, but I don't feel like it's that much more complicated. Yeah, I wasn't super crazy about it, Alex. And I really, it's disappointing when you kickstart a game, when the production is stellar, when it's got a designer that has created an all-time favorite. And I remember once I realized it hadn't come in, and I was looking at Tang Garden, I was kind of looking at the Kickstarter like, why did I back this? Like before I even played it, I'm like, this doesn't seem like something that I would have backed in the last 2 or 3 years. There's very little things I'm backing, and this was not something I would have normally backed, and it was weird. It was weird that I backed it to begin with.
So Sean, I just looked up the BGG weight scores for Isle of Skye and Tang Garden.
Okay.
What do you think the respective scores are for each of those games?
I suspect that Tang Garden has a higher score than Isle of Skye, but I think that's a misperception because of all of the stuff.
I actually disagree with you for reasons
Okay.
I will discuss in a second. But for the record, for folks who don't know, BGG weight rating 1 to 5. Basically, you go on and rate a game. Is it light, medium, medium heavy, or heavy? And each of those is associated with a number. Lower is lighter. Higher is heavier. By the way, NBC News did a board games for the holidays article that referenced the BGG weight rating, and my mind was blown by that.
Yeah, I saw that. That was pretty interesting.
Crazy. Anyway, so Isle of Skye has a 2.24, which puts it a shade above medium light.
Mm-hmm.
Tang Garden has a 2.61. which puts it closer to medium than to medium light.
Wow.
Most common rating for it is medium. And I would tend to agree that this is actually a heftier game in some ways than Isle of Skye.
Wow. Okay.
Here's my explanation.
Mm-hmm.
In Isle of Skye, which by the way, is a 6 for me, is a brilliant game. I think it got boxcars, didn't it?
I think I gave it a 5, but I'd bump it up to a 6.
Okay, okay, good. Retroactive boxcars.
Absolutely.
Amazing game. You have that price setting mechanic is a little bit unusual for folks, right? The fact that I lose the money if no one picks up my tile. I want to set it high enough, but not too high. I want to tempt in that auction management and the rotating goals is certainly a complicated element. The tile placement is dirt simple. Dirt simple.
Sure.
Tang Garden, here are the elements you have. You have the tile placement, relatively simple, except...
Dirt simple. I'd say dirt simple.
Except it's associated with tracks. It ties into those 3 respective tracks, which you need to move up at approximately the same rate for the most part if you want to get access to different characters. And how you place and what you have available to place can be a bit of a tricky decision. You have, say, 2 tiles available to pick from. One might be pretty good, but that's a lot of decoration cards I'm drawing on the back end instead. Maybe I give myself more options on decoration cards because I need to pair up this fish with this set of birds that I've already placed. That's one thing that's at play here. You have the decoration cards themselves. Is there enough room for the thing I'm trying to place? Is there enough room for what I'm trying to go? Because if you overbuild, that leaves a lot of opening for someone to come in and decorate. And if you over-decorate, there's no place to do that anymore, so you have to kind of go back to building.
Can you explain that some more? Because we didn't really explain that in the rules.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Once you pick a tile to place on the board, that stack is empty unless that tile that you took from one of the 4 available stacks led to only one option available. When there's only one option available, the other 3 flip. The other time they flip is if someone takes decoration cards. So if you draw decoration cards, let's say 2 of the tiles are face down at the time, I'm going to draw a base of 2 decoration cards plus 1 for each face down tile at the time. So if all 4 tiles are showing face up, I only draw 2 cards. If 2 of them are face up, then I draw 4 cards. So there's this balancing act and this sort of push your luck of you want to have more options for these decoration cards because you might take that action and you might not have anywhere to place the thing you just got in hand. So it's a risk. It's a little bit of a risk you're taking. So you have that balance of risk reward, right? You have that balance of, do I place one of these tiles out that might help one of my tracks max out or might get me eligible for a new character? Or do I, because there are more options now, get more decoration cards with the hopes that there's somewhere to put on the board, that it's super valuable? Those sorts of things really come into play. So there's that balancing act and that dance between the decoration side and the placement side. And that doesn't account yet at this point for the characters themselves and the decision you make when you acquire a new character, which is, which new character do I want? Which new character do I keep? Do I remove this character that's been getting me a pretty good ability because there's a nice opportunity for them to score their points out on the board? Or do I immediately add this other one, which I can maybe build up to having them score a lot of points, depending on location, and what's available, what's out there, where do you go, what do you do? So that, again, that interplay of those things, where's my character placed on the board? Which landscape tokens are they looking at, assuming that's relevant? And can I, and this is harder with this game, Sean, it's much harder to do, but how can I block or get in the way of someone trying to score their person? It's harder to do because it's harder to see at a distance what's going on. So you have to kind of process for yourself what you're doing on your turn. In any case, I would tend to agree that this is slightly more complex, not significantly more, but slightly more than Isle of Skye. Now, I like Isle of Skye a lot better than this. Sean, I'll ask you a question in terms of the characters themselves. Obviously, it's hard to distinguish some of them based on color, as we described before. Do you think they're well balanced?
Yeah. I mean, nothing. Like, so for example, there are certain ones that are looking for certain types of terrain features on the garden tiles, and it caps them, right? It caps them at, I think, 10 points, which is basically 5. So I think there's some balance there. I didn't notice any significant balance issues necessarily. At first I thought like the officer was overpowered, but then when I kind of did the math, I wasn't as concerned. So I didn't have any significant balance issues with the characters.
The one that stuck out to me are the ones that score you points when they're the active character based on decorations you place. So, for instance, the child is a good example of that. He scores when you place a bird or fish out there, and you have such little control over that. Whereas I think it's the monk, or it might be a slightly different name for the character, but I think it's the monk, will let you score if you only have 2 options of decoration cards or 2 options of tiles when you place a tile. Way easier to trigger that. Way easier. Now, it's possible their scoring bonus when they're placed on the board is it's easier to acquire the childs versus the monks, but I don't know. That ongoing benefit was pretty nice. I milked that ability a good amount. So was it just that it was too light for you, Sean, ultimately? Was it again that mix of too much to set up for what you got?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's a bad game by any stretch, but there's not when I'm going to take the time to set up and break down a game of that weight, I need a little more bang for my buck. And this did not offer that. And the really nice art and the components, it didn't offset that. And if anything, that was even held back by some of the playability issues resulting from it. So
that's fair. And again, I will say the charm of this overrode a lot of that. And I thought there was enough depth to the game that I still found it to be pretty engaging. Fully worth that setup time? I don't know. This one might be a hard one to get to the table just because of that.
Yeah.
I will say, if there's a game that's been hurt a ton by not having a convention this year, right? You do think of party games as games that are really suffering and hard to release this year due to COVID. I would say Tang Garden is another one that suffered because I can imagine this at a booth and people just stopping and staring.
Sure.
And that look, that table presence selling the game itself. But I agree, the setup and breakdown is an obstacle to getting into the table or what you get from the game. So I'd agree it's a downside. I do think it does enough, again, with the track manipulation and the building of the garden, the thematic joy you get from that. It's enough for me to overcome that as an overall objection. Again, I acknowledge there are flaws with this game. It's by no means perfect, but I think it does a lot of things really well, and not just from an appearance standpoint.
So just for fun, Alex, let me bring up 2 other rules issues and see what you thought. Number 1, what happens when you run out of decoration cards in the deck?
You shuffle and go again.
Okay. Do you know where it says that in the rulebook?
It probably doesn't.
It does not. I had to look at that up on BGG. The other thing, did you notice on certain tiles, most notably, and maybe exclusively, but at least most notably on the tiles that has the symbol that shows where you can place characters, did you notice certain red lines and like red semicircles or quarter circles or 3/4 circles?
I did not.
So these were simply fences. These were simply artistic fences, little red fences. Raquel noticed, she said, wait a minute, does that block line of sight? Because, for example, maybe it was just the tiles that we had out, but we had out a greenery tile that had a pattern of trees that would seem to indicate that the line of sight going down one side and out another side would have been blocked, and the red fence, the red circle, seemed to indicate that. There was also a rock tile where it looked like there was a pathway between 2 rocks, and that basically there were 2 precipices, and that would have blocked the line of sight. And I kind of liked the thought of that. And at first I'm like, oh, I think you're right. The rule book doesn't mention it. Let me see if I can find it somewhere. I looked up online. Certainly other people online had the same question. Hey, do these red lines mean something? Because it wasn't clear from just looking at them that they were fences right away. And that would have been an interesting restriction, like similarly to picking up, when you pick up the landscape tokens that allow you to place the landscape tiles, restricted to placing on the side that they came from. I thought restrictions would have been nice in a sense, but Yeah. Anyway.
Wasn't to be.
Guess not. Guess not.
So I'm do you feel like talking about theme more? Did
No,
I
we talked
kill
about it.
Okay, good.
No, we did it. We did it.
So Guild did have some thoughts on this one. Sylvain Lacroix said, first of all, it is a beautiful game and it really shines on the table. Gameplay-wise, it's an accessible game that's pretty interesting, but doesn't shine after a few plays. Sure, there's a lot to like, but the clarity of the icons and the landscape tiles are a bit tough to see. In the end, it's a nice game, but doesn't bring anything else to the table. I will give it a low 3.
And then BJ from Board Game Gumbo says, I've played twice on Tabletop Simulator, and I've enjoyed both games. It has a lovely mix of tile building plus one of my favorite mechanics where you have to decide whether to use a card for its ongoing effect or turn it in for points and another card, sort of an homage to Elysium, one of my favorite games. I don't like it as much as the other tile building games, but I think this would be easier to play and more fun in person, so I'm not going to rate it yet. And you got excited when you mentioned Elysium there, Alex, which is a boxcars winner. And in my mind, that mechanic is used much more frequently and to much better effect in Elysium than it is here.
Of course, it is a touch of that effect. But
Sure.
it is present. It is that decision point of, do I stay with this ongoing effect or do I ditch it and move it down, quote unquote, move it down for points by moving the character onto the board? So it has that decision point in there at least. And I could absolutely see where he is picking that up from. It's obviously done better in Elysium. We've compared this to Elysium, Isle of Skye. We'll hear ratings in a moment here, but this is not a 6 by any stretch. But I think he's right. That's a good connection to make. That it does have that Elysium-like decision between characters.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll go first because I think there's probably a little bit less drama in mine than yours. Was not a huge fan of this game. Especially because of the Goldrum scale, the Goldrum ratio, whatever you want to call it. I think it's fine at its heart. I think it's a good game. It's just not one that I have any interest in going to the effort of pulling out, setting up, playing it, putting it away, etc. It's too big for what it is. It takes up way too much shelf space. I have the 2 expansions that I got from the Kickstarter. I early on, Raquel and I were like, hey, do we want to play these? And after our final play, we're just like, yeah, no, we're good. I'm not going to keep this game. I'm going to get rid of it probably pretty soon here. I think it's good. And I think that there are many people that would greatly enjoy this game, especially if they want a wow factor and they want a bit of that toy factor in a lighter tile placement game. So I'm going to give this a 3. Game is okay, not exciting while playing the right situation. By the way, we rate everything here at the Dukes of Dice on a 6-point scale. 1 is bad, as Alex puts it. And 6 is good, very good, very good, good, as Alex puts it. Is that right? Did I quote you correctly?
Yeah, pretty close. I mean, maybe a few more bads and goods in there, but it's
yeah, a few more bads and goods. So this is a 3, which is the very top of the bottom half of our rating score.
There you go. Can't ask for much more than that.
Or it's the bottom of the middle third.
Oh, geez.
However you want to look at it, I'm giving it a 3. Game is okay. Not exciting while playing the right situation. I think that this could very easily be a 4 for a great many people, and I'm guessing it's going to be higher than that for you.
No, it's a 4 for me as well.
Oh, it's a 4. Okay.
No, it's absolutely a 5. No, I'm not going that high. So
okay.
Yeah, difference between the two. 4 is a good game worth playing, just not all the time, belongs in the Duchy. 5, a great game, will rarely turn down a play of it. And I would say that my enjoyment of this game is much closer to good than great. It is again, it has a nice combination of, again, that tile element, the character abilities, the tracks that you're moving up. But a lot of this game, Sean, is the intangibles, right? It's that thematic connection of building the garden. It's that look on the table that, again, while not practical, it does look really cool. And it also is just a nice looking box on the shelf, which is aesthetically, it's a good thing. It does take up too much space. It does have setup and breakdown issues. It does have playability issues. Its rulebook is a little bit of a mess. And at the core there's a game I would describe as good with a production that is top-notch, over-the-top top-notch in most regards. And so I think I settle pretty comfortably, and I don't think it'll move from here a year from now, Sean. It will settle for me at a 4. Now, the difficulty to get to the table, I don't know if I'll have played it a year from now. I'm not positive about that. But I think it's still likely to stay there because I think I'm just unlikely to move on from it. It looks nice, and it's in terms of production, it's a good example of what an immersive thematic experience should feel like. That's still a game. That's not a full miniatures style experience. So I enjoyed it more than you, but I absolutely understand. So this is kind of the thing. I thought you might be lower on this one, score wise.
Oh no. I mean, it's at its heart, it's a solid game. I mean, it is. There are problems with it, but I can't fault the design. It's certainly no Signore. But I wouldn't dream of calling this a 2. Like,
okay,
2s tend to be painful, and I wouldn't say this was painful.
All right, fair enough.
Just wasn't my cup of tea, Alex.
And nor would I expect it to be. It does not feel like a Sean game at its core. So, all right, that's going to do it for Tang Garden. Gets a solid 4 from me and a solid 3 from Sean.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out dicetowernetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
Next up, we're looking at episode 213, Deck List of Champions, where we were talking about Marvel champions. And this is one that I think has had some staying power, and Guild certainly had a lot of thoughts on this one, Sean. At the time, you gave this one a 5. You were questioning at the moment to what extent were you going to want to keep coming back. You thought it was streamlined, but you were more likely to play this thing solo. You're going to give it a try, see what was going to happen, and it might fall to a 4 potentially. I gave this one a 4, and I said, look, there's a lot more here for Sean than there is for me. You combine deck construction, a thing you really like, with Marvel. That being said, it was thematic, it was fun. I liked the flipping between hero and alter ego, and for that reason, I gave it a 4. There was enough to justify the 4. Sean, have you played this game since, and has your score changed since?
My score has changed since, Alex. Let me correct you what you said. So it's not that I thought it would fall to a 4. I said if I hadn't played this in the intervening year, maybe it could fall to a 4.
Right.
I have played a metric crap ton of this game, Alex. I have continued to buy the expansions. I'm behind. I'm very behind in the expansions. But I continue to play this. This is my preferred solo game. And I also prefer it solo to higher player counts. There's just something about it as a solo game for me that I really enjoy. And I currently own everything for it. I'm going to continue buying everything for it. I'm eager to spend some time kind of getting caught up and playing with the new heroes. There's the Rise of Red Skull scenario box that I haven't even touched yet. There's the new Kang, the Conqueror one. There's so much stuff here. This is going to be a 6. I'm raising this to a 6. All-time favorite. That's a contender for the top 10. I expect to continue to have a ton of fun with this. And I probably play it. There's a point where I was playing it a couple times a week. It's probably about a couple times a month now. And I need to get caught up, and I'm happy to kind of invest some time to do that over the next couple months. I love this game. It is a fantastic LCG. Yeah. So here, let me say this. Solo 6. It's a solo 6, and it's probably a 6 overall. I am more willing to play this 2 players, maybe 3 players. I really don't want to play this 4 players. And there'll be some comments about that in the guild.
Sean, we went in opposite directions on this one.
Yeah.
I moved my copy along. I had a sort of a clear out some games thing on the guild, and this was one of the top picks, understandably so. It is no longer in my collection. I do not have this game anymore. I think I might have played it once after the review with other folks in the gaming groups here in St. Louis locally. It's just, again, the theme doesn't grab me. I'm not inclined to set this up and play solo. Mm-hmm. I respect the game. To be clear, my rating's not going to drop. Even though, by all accounts, according to the scale, maybe it should. I would say that I would call this game good more than I would call it okay. But I don't need to own it. It doesn't need to be in my collection specifically. That being said, if it's set up at a table, I'm invited to at a convention, I have no problem diving back in and playing this. It's a well-done game. It's just not for me on a couple of fronts. So, stays at a 4. I'm not surprised it's gone up for you. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
All right, well, let's pour through these guild thoughts, Alex, because there is a ton. BJ said, the game is well designed, plays smoothly, and is very thematic. My only issue is I play it with people who play the game a lot. I don't know the cards or gameplay as well as they do, so I kind of get lost in just following the action. That's why I usually play a support character like Spidey Protection. It is definitely a 4 on the Duke scale, one I would own if we didn't have 5 other copies in the gumbo, and one I would not turn down.
Yeah, BJ, you and I are aligned with this one for sure. It is very thematic. It is well designed. It does play pretty smoothly. It's just not a theme I care about so much. So,
boo!
Whatever. D. Shannon says, we love Marvel Champions in the way that we wanted to love Legendary. It's still modular, but less fiddly, still collectible, but more stocking stuffer friendly. Can you fit this in a stocking? Ooh, I don't know. Anyway, at first I worried about deck customization and keeping cards straight, because that takes a certain level of effort for us with Lord of the Rings LCG that takes some of the fun away. But once I realized each new hero pack is playable straight out of the blister, I decided to take Rahdo's approach and be content with base decks as they come. Lord of the Rings LCG approaches the level of lifestyle game for us, and I'm really pleased with having a similar game that appeals to my kids and is accessible enough for them to enjoy as well. The game has its flaws, but achieves all the things I want from it as a father and a fanboy. A ducal 5 from us.
Very cool. Jimmy DM90 says Marvel Champions isn't perfect, but it gets a 6 for me as I can't stop playing it and buying stuff for it. Over the last year, I've played 125 games of Champions, and there are no signs of my interest slowing down. I imagine the game's just going to get better as the designers get more and more comfortable with it. Alex, I think when we reviewed this, I had played it like 32, 34 times. You had played it like 3. If that says something.
Yeah.
I don't think I've played it 125 times. I've probably played it close to like 80 to 100, somewhere in there.
Jeez.
But it's quick. I mean, but I can play like 3 games of it in an hour solo, like it's quick. So yeah.
All right. Sylvain Lacroix says, it's one of my favorite solo games. Please do not play at 3 or more players because the game is way too long and doesn't scale very well. However, solo or 2 players, it's a fantastic game. I currently own absolutely everything so far and even got a 3D organizer printed. It's a fantastic game, easily gets a 6. It is a contender for my top 10. Please note that I'm also a Marvel fanboy. Fair enough.
And we should point out that this post did spark a Capulet versus Montague level blood feud between BJ and Sylvain, which they've resolved. They've resolved.
Oh, good. I'm happy to hear that.
They both drank poison, and yeah. All right.
Yikes.
And then King Splendor said, I received Marvel Champions last Christmas and have since played it solo 20 times. In that time, it has risen to my top solo game, and being that I am mostly a solo gamer, it is currently also my number 1 game of all time. I love theme in gaming and also love the MCU, so this game really is the perfect fit for me. I just love how refilling your hand of cards makes for such a combo puzzly challenge every turn. The replayability is through the roof. I still haven't even played with all of the heroes from the core set, despite owning a few expansion packs, including Rise of the Red Skull. Can't wait to get the Rise of the Red Skull to the table. Obviously, a 6 for me. Wow. I added the wows, not him.
Oh, okay.
Wows were for me.
Sean, so you mentioned this is a 6. Is this in your top 10?
I don't think so, but it's probably in the top 25. How would I know, Alex? Because you refused to let us do a top 10 for our recent anniversary episode.
I don't regret it, by the way.
I know, it's fine. It's fine. No, I don't think so. I don't think so. It's probably my top solo game.
Okay.
Yeah. I think so.
All right.
I think so.
Well, there you have it. That is our double take of Marvel Champions. Goes from a 5 up to a 6 for Sean and stays at a comfortable 4 for me. I'll almost do it for this episode, but before we wrap things up, we have the best of the rest, the names we didn't pick, but almost did. And as you mentioned, Sean, this was a good week for names. A good week, for sure. Let's start things off with the name father, Steve O'Rourke, with Gardens of the Galaxy, referencing the Marvel connection with Guardians of the Galaxy, and Tang Garden. Dug that. Nice name.
And then Baker Mitchell suggested Tang the drink of champions. Obviously, it's got the Tang in there. And is that like a Breakfast of Champions reference? Like we use the Breakfast of Champions?
Yeah, something like that. That it might be an advertising slogan for Tang. It might actually be the slogan. I'm not sure, but it sounded good enough. I liked it. I like the name.
All right.
Jimmy DM90 with Tang the Conqueror, referencing Krang the Conqueror. Is that right?
Kang. Kang. K-A-N-G.
Oh, okay. Oh, I'm thinking of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes, that's Krang.
Yeah, okay. I don't feel so bad about that. Anyway.
Oh, Tang, I think there may have been like a tagline, the drink of the astronauts.
Oh, okay.
Which makes sense. So, yeah, all right. Anyway, BJ suggested bam, pow, Tang with all of the comic book fight exclamations. Not exclamations. What's onomatopoeics? Is that a word? What do you call it? What's the noun of automatopoeians?
This is over my head. I've never heard onomatopoeia used in that context. And I think it's the grammar folks are going to be all over us for this one. It is again, an exclamation is what I would have in my head, but there's another term for it. I don't know.
People aren't saying it. It's the punching and the kicking that's making these sounds.
Right. Correct. I don't know.
So
anyway. And then Severin Heiberg with one that made me chuckle. Hulk drink Tang. So there you go. Nice names, everyone. Good job on the guild. If you want to participate, head on over to our Board Game Geek Guild, guild number 2008. Well, Sean, we've done it again.
We sure have, and we're going to keep doing it.
Oh, okay. We're committing this time.
We're committing. Yeah, okay. We're not gonna end this. All right. Well, that's gonna do it for episode 238. Did you already mention the episode title?
No, I didn't.
Okay, well, I'll mention it now then. 238, episode 238. Thanks again to Blaine Miley for that title, Wu-Tang Stan. Until next time, this is Irate Ninja.
And beloved Overlord.
And Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to the Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on November 19th, 2020. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the latest in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Arcane Wonders and Game Toppers, LLC. You can learn more about Arcane Wonders fine titles at ArcaneWonders.com and find out all you need to know about Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com. We'll see you back here in 1 week. Until then, game on!